Hello and thanks so much for joining us from wherever you are. We are coming to live from our studios in Kokomlemle on digital address GA0992539. Our leading stories this hour: with 4 days to elections, go out and vote in peace. That's the rallying call from the immediate past chairman of the National Peace Council, Most Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante, as he urges the EC and the political parties to ensure fairness during Monday's vote
and promote peace, because peace is the condition for the possibility of development. Without peace, all the promises and the kinds of things that your political parties are promising will not be there.
This afternoon, Kodeo has also unveiled its situation room where thousands of its observers who will be deployed to polling stations across the country will share information and help the country compare information being shared by the EC.
That all our observers to send in their data, their text messaging data, which we will process and be able to share with the public in terms of how the elections are going.
Plus, we hit the campaign trail with just 4 days. Yes, 4 days to the 2020 presidential and parliamentary elections. This is your election headquarters in association with Petrosol, a delightful experience, Cowbell Coffee and Pat Eva Furniture for a modern office. Thanks for choosing us. This is your home of credible, independent and fearless journalism. Many thanks for choosing us. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. We begin on our campaign trail. The PPP presidential candidate, Bridget Jogbenuko, is calling on the people of Bimbilla and the general public to vote the party for change. She was speaking at a mini rally in Bimbilla on 3 central themes: change to allow younger people to manage the affairs of the country, change for a woman, and change completely from our way of voting.
But nobody is interested in coming to invest in it for you because of the parties you vote for. They don't know. They don't have the idea. They are not interested in your getting jobs. They are interested in staying in power for 4 years. Every 4 years, that's all they are interested in. But you should be interested in your future. You the young ones, be interested in your future. I understand that you are farmers here. You have yam, you have grains, millet, rice. But look at your road. We, the PPP, will construct the roads to all these areas. We will construct all your roads. We want to construct the roads not because it is nice, but because we can bring investment here. We can bring a factory here to process your grain, to process your yam. And in those factories, you will get a job. You don't have to go to Accra to go and work. The jobs can come to you here. The jobs can come to you here. If you vote for the right party, the jobs will come to you. So vote for a party that is good at giving jobs. Our founder, they say, is a Jumara. We believe that the jobs are in your towns and districts. We can create the jobs for you. First of all, what we just need is to make your community accessible so that cars and investors can come here and you will have the jobs. But if you keep voting for parties that are not interested in you or in your development, but only interested in 4 years of staying in power every time, then we will remain like this. So when you all go to vote 7 December, think about your own life and where you want it to go.
President Akufo-Addo is on a day's tour of parts of the eastern region. He's visiting Akemoda and Sanwam, Suhum and Ekropon after wrapping up his 3-day tour of the Ashanti region. At the final rally at Ashanti New Town in the Menchia South constituency, the president said lies and deceit being propagated by his main opponent, John Mahama, will be rejected by Ghanaians, describing the free senior high school program as an envy of the world. Nana Akufo-Addo said government will work to make it even better to guarantee sound education for the populace.
Our educational system is the envy of the world. We are singing baby ameko. You come up by the first thing people talk about, Ghana's free senior high school system. Yeah, one yes, NDC presidential candidate. My opinion that I didn't, I'm so don't know the SHS by. Hey, so be Ghana, bet me a dear dancer or I am Matthew Poco Prempe. Namuni by the Kuntia. Your penny also yame, and now no disaster Ghana. His campaign has collapsed. Mahama's campaign has collapsed. Ababianim. So, he's resorted to lies, to outright fabrications, misrepresentations, confusion of thought. The NDC presidential candidature has collapsed. The campaign is no longer viable for the Ghanaian people. Obia, what's wrong with Ding or Waha? Bekonwa kwa kontunaba. Faukan. Bobianka. Say, oh, Nana Kra, when you did that, he has me kwa koto. Unto wodia, Nana enyaye. Unto wodia, Napo onyaye. It's the midi jamo. And they said, Juadano. Ampa. Yeah, Kwakotono. Boom, 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 boom.
And Samini, who was performing on the night, called on the youth to vote for President Akufo-Addo. Before then, let's speak with presidential correspondent Elton Broby, who's been following the president. Elton, what other message has the president been sending to the people of the Eastern and Ashanti regions as he wraps up his tour? Hello, Elton.
Hello, Gypsy.
Elton, this is Aisha. I'm finding out what other messages the president has been sending to the people of the Eastern and Ashanti regions as he wraps up his tour.
Well, Aisha, the message, apart from counting his record in Ghana, he does so well. He's also been talking about the need for the people to go out on Mondays to vote, because that's the only way the NDC can carry through its development agenda for the country for the next 4 years. President Akufo-Addo says that the election is about the future of the youth, the future of the secondary education, the future of the country's prosperity. For that reason, people attempt to debate to the real matter has already been set in motion. Where we are currently is Adelso, in the upper west constituency of the region. I've held it for some time now. The MPP is hoping to take it this time. So you realize that most of the stuff we are going through today, some of the attention is being given to all constituency in the country. So we are currently in the upper west constituency, which is an NDC. The NDC is hoping to win it. We just got here from Timoda, where President Akufo-Addo introduced the member of parliament for the area and the parliamentary candidates as well. Following this campaign, the Eastern region, according to government people who are handling the president, they want to describe this as the final mop-up exercise ahead of Monday too. What they are doing is to encourage people who rejuvenate the base of the party and get them to come out to vote. In the Eastern region, they are targeting 80% of the popular vote. Remember that in the last electoral rule published by the Electoral Commission, that will be used for the upcoming general election. The Eastern region comes in the third position as the region with the highest people on the electoral roll, about 1.64 million people behind the Greater South region and the Ashanti region. So the region is very significant. And this is also the president's own home region. That's how come today they are devoting it to areas that they get most of their votes from Upper West Akem, where we are right now. We'll move to Itawam and then to move and then let's go on before wrapping it up here in the region. So, Aisha, the message from the president for now, I've just focused more on the need for this to come out and go. In fact, the record is there. The issue about who implemented the PCRG program is no debate at all for him. What he is interested in is how with any group that have the indication about to find through a make the president better so that it can respond to the needs of students.
Elton Brobe is our presidential affairs correspondent. He's been with the president throughout his tour. Let's now listen to musician Samini, who's been performing on the NPP's platform.
Say, baby, Edruno, you move be wa nanka first no, nanka yenyi enimu say. But say yenyi na ye koye enimu no na ye drum pempenso bi a e wo say yen so ye yetimi di eni eka ho say oman no betu mpon a na wo say emrante ne mmaba wa yen so ye de ye ho ka ho bi na ye ka adwuma ne ho bi enti say me metena se na me de mani to form na me hwe de e ko na me gidi say say yetimi ma daddy etoa so one me ya adwen one me ya adwen ma me won saba ko wiem say aha enti se dey no dua na odu a daddy one number he okay and honorable Matthew Poku Prempen so one number he enti odu a na o de team so no one making sure say o de team so ye menye mistake wo ho na ye ntimi ma daddy ento adwuma ne so ma ne nya fe what you say na me so me kakra may I say me de be contributing aka campaign ne won say de be ya for more agenda ne be baso no e nyum ba ko bia me ye ya be bia wo be hu daddy bia e ya man po ya kama me what na daddy aye ni nyina.
And on the NDC platform, candidate John Mahama will later this afternoon begin a tour of the Volta and OT regions as he ended his visit to the Eastern region this morning. In the Eastern region yesterday, he urged party supporters to be vigilant during next week Monday's elections. Maxwell Agwagba is with the campaign team and now joins us via Zoom. Maxwell, tell me about the message the president, the former president, has been sharing with the people in the Eastern region, and how are they responding to the messages?
Well, his message mainly in the Eastern region focused on mining. It also focused on mining. It also focused on education. It also focused on the NDC's National Apprenticeship program. In the Brim North District, he has been talking about cocoa roads, and he says that when the NDC government was in power, they actually started constructing the road from Nkoko to New Ebrim in the Eastern region. He says they had constructed about just 5 kilometers of that stretch. But in 2016, he says that in 2016, they were voted out of office, so they couldn't complete the road. He says the road was left at that 5 kilometer stretch that they had completed for so many years. And he says that just after 4 years that the contractors moved site. And he thinks, he says that the contractors moved to site only because the elections were drawing closer. He says it is only to get the electorate to vote for the MPP, and he has been promising them that if the NDC is voted into power come December 7th, we'll make sure that road is fixed, and then many other roads also in that region are fixed. He has also been talking about small-scale mining. He says to ensure sustainable small-scale mining in the Brim North District, it is important for the people, for young people, to be engaged actively. And he says that they must be engaged actively to do the mining in a sustainable way. He says about 1 million young people will be employed if the small-scale mining sector is properly regulated, and all the important environmental measures are put in place to check the degradation that can be caused to the environment. He says that if the NDC is voted into power as part of a wider mining sector reform, the NDC will pardon persons who have been incarcerated for engaging in illegal mining, Galamsey. He has also been reiterating his promise of returning mining concessions and mining equipment that were unjustifiably taken from some persons in the eastern region. Key among some of the things he has also been talking about is the party's national apprenticeship program. He specifically singled out hairdressers and dressmakers in the eastern region. He told them that this policy is for them, especially for the young ones who want to go into that business. He says the national apprenticeship program would make sure that they are equipped with the needed skills and with the right logistics. He says that the people will be trained, and then the NDC would also make sure that they are given the necessary logistics that will enable them to go ahead and carry out their trade. He has also been talking about the free senior high school policy, and he says that he has had a lot of talk going on that the NDC will abolish the free senior high school if it is elected into power. He says that the free senior high school is a good policy and that the NDC will not abolish free senior high school if it is elected. Rather, it will improve on free senior high school policy. And he says that it is a double track that the NDC will abolish if it is voted into power within 1 year. He says the double track defeats the purpose of the free senior high school, and the future NDC government will abolish it. He has also been talking about employment, providing jobs for the people. But he's continuing his visit he's continuing with his tour to the Volta region today. The Eastern region tour started yesterday around 11 a.m. It ended this morning around 4:30, 5:30 a.m.
Maxwell, before I let you go, which areas in the Volta and OT regions will he be visiting?
Well, in the OT region, we understand he's expected to be in the Dampai constituency and others. The Volta region continues to be the stronghold of the NDC. And some weeks ago, the NPP presidential candidate was, in the Volta region. There he campaigned strongly for Energy Minister John Putalewu to win the Hohoi seat. We understand that the NDC presidential candidate is expected to also be in that constituency to consolidate the gains of the NDC in the region, and also try and undo the gains made by President Akufo-Addo when he visited sometime in November.
Maxwell Agbagba is our man on the NDC campaign trail. We'll be bringing you more of that in our subsequent bulletins. But still on the former President John Mahama, he's dismissed recent researches and polls that says President Akufo-Addo will lead in the upcoming polls. Mr. Mahama describes them as concocted. In an interview with JoyNews' MFR Powell after his Savannah regional campaign tour, Mr. Mahama also charged the EC to work hard to inspire confidence and hints of last-minute policies his party will roll out before December 7.
Cooking the polls, of course, they will point in your favor. You saw the example of University of Ghana recently, where people were paid to manufacture a fake poll, saying that the MPP was going to win, And so there are a lot of polls that are manufactured. We've done our own polling, and we are quite confident. Well, one of our polling indicates that we're winning the majority in Parliament, so that is a given. We're aiming at between 143 and 145 seats. They took more than 37 seats from us. We're claiming most. We're going to take most of them back.
You have confidence in the G-Mensa-led EC?
They'll have to win my confidence.
Flag bearer of the NDC, John Mahama, is advising the EC to be extra careful of voters who attempt to take shots of their ballot sheets. Some voters were arrested for taking shots of their ballot sheets during the just-ended special voting. Speaking to MFR, Mr. Mahama said, despite the smooth process of the special voting, the EC should find a way to position the booth in order to check voters who try to break the laws of the voting process on December 7.
We want to find out about what kind of briefing you're receiving, at least from the special voting. It was just yesterday, 1st of December. Have you had any briefing of a sort in terms of how it went?
Well, the feedback we have is that it went well. It was generally calm, and as many people as possible voted. There were a few complaints of some people whose names were not on the list, even though they had registered. I don't think it's earth-shaking because I haven't heard it generally. There are a few of those complaints, but aside from that, special voting is something we've done over the years. When it's finished, the ballot boxes are sealed and kept until 7th, and then they are added to the general vote count. So it's nothing special. People will speculate that somebody won and somebody won. The only thing untoward was people were taking pictures of their paper. The vote is supposed to be secret, and so it means that the EC must look at that and do something about it. I heard them say no cameras in their phones in the polling area, you know, but of course some of the agents who need their phones to do their work, if the agents and the electoral officers have phones, maybe that's okay, but I mean for voters to come and take pictures, you know, might be a bit of a problem. Maybe it might depend on how they position the booth where you vote. Sometimes they turn it so you can't see what the voter is doing behind it. So it can be turned so that you can see him from the back. You can't see his ballot paper. But if he's taking something from his pocket and doing something, you can tell that he's doing something untoward in there. It will even help with people who might have extra ballot papers they want to add. It might be in their pockets. And so if he's taking something out of his pocket and adding it to something, you'll be able to tell. But that's for the EC to decipher.
And with 4 days to the 2020 polls, the immediate past chairman of the Peace Council is making a clarion call on all Ghanaians to turn out in their numbers to vote on December 7 and also do so peacefully.
My brothers and sisters in Ghana, let me make this clear to us. Elections are opportunities given to us to exercise our franchise, to select people who will go into parliament to enact laws that will govern our lives and our relationship, to elect the executive, the president and his people, so that Ghana's development will move forward. It is an opportunity for you, a Ghanaian, to exercise your franchise. Your political opponent is not your enemy. The Ghana's constitution promotes multi-party democracy. It means that, you know, people have the right to belong to their political parties of their choice. Don't look at that person as an enemy who belongs to a different party. The founder of Methodism had this to say. He says, don't allow somebody to buy you so that you vote for that person. Don't sell your conscience. The second thing is that do not consider the person you did not vote for as an enemy. Obviously, you cannot vote for two people. You have one choice. But the other person is also a Ghanaian. Don't look down upon that person. And the third thing that John Wesley also said is this: don't consider people who belong to different parties as enemies. Let's see ourselves as people who are related. And promote peace, because peace is the condition for the possibility of development. Without peace, all the promises and the kinds of things that your political parties are promising will not be there. Stand for Ghana. Stand for the peace of the country. I stand for Ghana. I stand for the peace of the country. I will go and cast my vote, go home and relax till God chooses somebody for us. I'm also pleading with all the others, the Electoral Commission people, be honest and make sure that our votes truly count.
And as you may have read, several opinion polls have predicted the governing New Patriotic Party will either lead or emerge victorious in the upcoming polls. Well, the NPP says it is not resting on its oars or becoming complacent following the polls that have put it in the lead. Well, campaign manager of the NPP, Peter McMenu, says they're hoping to win the elections with the margin of victory of over 1.5 million votes in the presidential and 66% of the parliamentary seats. He spoke to my colleague, Mama Viuso Abuaj.
The campaign has been smooth. The campaign has been peaceful. The campaign has been civil, based on ideas. Me and my team, the campaign team, have been working extremely hard because our target, our objective, is to win one touch with a margin of victory of over 1.5 million votes in the presidential and 66% of the parliamentary seats, which is close to 198, 200 seats. So once we had set ourselves these ambitious targets, it only takes a hard work to be able to achieve them. That's exactly what our team, the NPP campaign team, led by me, are doing.
Yourself, and as you say, an ambitious targets. There are various polls that put you in the lead ahead of your main contender, the NDC's candidate, John Mahama. But there is also another poll that uses the statistical methodology that says that it won't be a one-touch victory in this 2020 election.
Well, you see, we do have been told by various researchers and pollsters that we're going to win one touch. Nevertheless, we're not going to go asleep. We are not going to be complacent. We are working extremely hard because, you see, in elections, the magic to the victory is hard work.
We're live on the polls, and remember, this is your election headquarters. Stay here for everything election. We'll take a break. We'll bring you more after this break. And it's 4 days to elections. All Ghanaians of sound mind, 18 years and above, on Monday will be in the queue to elect a leader. On Tuesday, December 1, we hosted an officer from the Rent Control Department talking about elections and rent-related matters. Because from experience, and depending on which party wins the elections, the possibility of rancor between landlords and their tenants, if they both belong to different political parties, and especially if the tenant supports the winning party and the landlord's party loses. In some cases, tenants have been thrown out, sometimes for jubilating after declaration of results. And if you have not paid your rents at that time, it could be worse. So what does the law say about this? Public Relations Officer for the Rent Control Department of Ghana, Emmanuel Hovekposu, joins us again in the studio to continue from where we left off last week. Share with us if you have a similar story or at least know someone who has been there on WhatsApp number 0540109009. The number is on your screen, and I will be reading it here. You can also ask your questions, and I will ask him for the response. So this shouldn't have been a problem. Let me welcome you first on the polls, but of course, it's an election, and we all can't be or support the same ideology. So it shouldn't have been a problem at all. Why are we going through this?
Thank you, Aisha, for this opportunity. You know, when you look universally, the Universal Declaration on Human Rights has given each person in the world some fundamental human rights and freedom. But when you come specifically into our Constitution, if you look at Article 12.2, he has given us, as Ghanaians, our freedom, and then that's human right and freedom. But in exercising our freedom and then our rights, you have to consider the freedom and right of the other person, and then the public interest as well. So in exercising your freedom as a landlord, where we have to dwell in specifically now, as a landlord, if you are expressing your freedom and right, you still need to consider your tenant. And as a tenant, if you are also expressing your right, you need to consider your co-tenant as well as your landlord. So you just as the comment you made, this shouldn't have been a problem. But you know, some people over-jubilate and some people overreact, and which constitutes certain offenses under the Act. When you look at Section 25, there are a series of offenses that when you commit as a tenant, the landlord can use that to order for eviction. So some of the offenses there are causing nuisance and annoyance. When you want to dwell in specifically, being in a political party, let's assume your party have won the election. You need not to overjubilate to cause annoyance to your fellow tenants who are on the other side of the party, or even your landlord. And as a landlord too, if your party has won and somebody has come to rent your premises, you shouldn't take advantage of that and then causing what we call an inducement to that person. You just be doing things that, for instance, if you cannot stay, then leave. It constitutes an offense. These are specific offenses that has been stipulated under the Rent Act, which we are just cautioning all landlord and tenant to be adhered to, so that before, during, and after the election, we'll all live peacefully with no cause of people coming to the rent control department with summons or with problems that we have to solve. So we are just promoting this piece, that we should know all our rights and responsibilities as landlord. We should know our rights and responsibilities as tenants, so that during this period we can live in harmony. And then we stay.
I'm happy that you made the point that people should jubilate moderately so they don't offend the other partners who are on the other side. But considering the fact that we're human beings, and of course people go beyond boundaries when they are overexcited. What's your definition of moderate? Because your definition of moderate may not be the same definition of moderate to another person.
Okay, so our definition, so this comes to mind that if a tenant in the face of a landlord, you assume that some offense has been committed, you, the landlord, has no right to forcefully eject the tenant from your premises. The first point of call is to come to the rent control with your problem. We invite the two of you, do an investigation and make determination. It will be very difficult to measure the level of annoyance or this thing, as you mentioned. So that's why we invite the two people, listen to them. And if there is a need for us to get witnesses, we invite the witnesses so that we make sure we settle the case. You know, the motto for the department is to promote peace and reconcile parties. This is the motto we have at the Rent Control Department. So in all cases, no matter how grieved you come to our office, we make sure before you leave our office, you live in peace, you live in harmony. So the level of the annoyance, as you mentioned, will be determined when we get the two of them and listen to them and then try to resolve the issue.
Interesting, but of course, you cannot stop me from jubilating. The law permits me freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of association. So as a landlord or a landlady, you cannot tell me which party to belong to, and you cannot tell me not to jubilate when I'm happy. You cannot suppress my happiness. What does the law say? What are the provisions?
Okay, so just as you mentioned, in exercising your freedom, your fundamental freedom, you need to consider the right of the other person. You also need to consider the public interest. I just want to quote what Section 12(2) of the Constitution states. And in a nutshell, what the article is telling us that we all have our freedom and the fundamental human right. But in exercising it, we have to consider the right of the other person. And we have to consider the public interest. So this fundamental, you have the right for privacy, you have the right to freedom of movement, right to everything. But the question is that when you are exercising it, make sure your other person is not offended. So the level of it has to be determined by somebody else. That's why you don't have the right as a landlord to determine if an offense has been committed, and then based on that, you try to evict a tenant from your premises. So this is the caution we are sending to all the landlords and tenants.
It's quite interesting how this pans out, because I've seen a number of issues with regards to this. People can't even jubilate in their homes because they know that once they do that, they would have problems with their landlord or their landlady because they are on the different side of the divide. But of course, this is a national event. It's a constitutional right. Nobody can take that away from someone. A number of comments are coming on our page, our WhatsApp page. I know a lot of people are going through this. Let's take a few of the comments and see what people are talking about. Okay, so please, no calls. Let's send messages, and don't be harsh in your messages. Just state your point, no insults. Let me start with this one. It said, okay, I don't know what you're trying to say. Let me pick this one. He said, I'll be extremely appreciative if your robust broadcasting corporation can help me reach. Okay, so he's talking about something else. Let's look at this one. Okay, so when you meet young people, okay, so some of them are talking about different things, but I'm just looking out of, please, no calls. Please don't call the numbers on your screen. It's a WhatsApp line. Just send your message. We'll read them here. If you have a question, send it. We'll ask for you, and then we'll get answers to your questions. If you don't have any of these, don't call the numbers. All right, so,
okay, so now, sorry, just whilst we're looking for, I wanted to quote specifically Article 12.2.
Okay.
And it states, that is the chapter 5, the fundamental right and freedom of our constitution. And it states, every person in Ghana, whatever is race, place of origin, political opinion, this is where the emphasis is, political opinion, color, religion, creed, or gender, shall be entitled to the fundamental human right and freedom of the individual concerned in this chapter, but subject to the respect for the right and freedom of the others and for the public interest. So just as we are mentioning, if you are jubilating, you have the right. That's your fundamental human right. But in exercising it, you have to consider the right of the other person. We assume you just want to jubilate. You put your sound system on where it's playing your political song. You have to consider the privacy of the other person who is also dwelling in the same premises. So that's why we are mentioning you can jubilate, but do it that it will not offend somebody.
And as you're exercising your right, you must be responsible at the same time. Let me take this one from Van Zyl. He says, I was in the Volta region when MPP won elections. I was in a rented house where the landlord told me to vacate from the house because I campaigned and voted for President Akufo-Addo. That makes me to rush, made me rush to Kumasi to rent because I know as a tenant, I'll be given more years to stay. And that, so if in the event that your landlord or your landlady wants to eject you because you voted for a certain party that he or she doesn't belong to, I mean, how do you go about this?
Okay, so the first point you have to do is to come to the rent control department, because no landlord has the right, if you sign a tenancy agreement and the tenancy has not expired, will forcibly eject you or induce you to move out if your tenancy has not expired. So this is an offense which can be seen under Section 27 of the Rent Act. So the first point of call as a tenant is to go to the nearest rent control office. We invite the landlord and then put the section that the offense that the landlord is committing before him or her as being a landlord or a landlady. And then we try to make peace between the two.
And this one is from Abena Boachiwa from Adenta. She says, good afternoon. My landlady has been quarreling with me and she says I should let the president build for me.
You know, these are mistakes some of the landlords are making. You know, you can build your premises and dwell in personally. No rent act inflates on you. But when it comes to mine, I want to put it on the commercial platform to get money from it. Then there are rules and regulations that governs this activity or this commercial activity that you want to embark on. So what landlords who have rented houses should take note that immediately they rent their premises out, there are rules and regulations, which is the Rent Act, 1963 Act 220. They should adhere to the regulations or the guidance of this. You can get this online, or you can go to the Ghana Publishing Company and get the Rent Act and read it and understand what are required of you as a landlord, so that you know your rights, you know your responsibility whenever you give a premises to somebody and you take money from that person.
Let's take this one. He didn't add its name. He says, please, I have a tenant who I have. Okay, so this actually not related to election, but rent issues. I have a tenant who I've been with for 3 months and I want to terminate the tenancy. Will the tenant pay for the 3 months he has stayed?
Okay, so we are still sending this caution that there's no free rent in Ghana. If you look at Section 31 of the Rent Act, it states in a nutshell that nothing should stop a landlord from collecting his rent. Nothing at all. So there's no free rent. If you are given a time or it stays in somebody's premises, the law requires that you pay the rent for the duration that you've stayed. So, but if the person has not committed any offense, first we have to establish whether the tenant has committed any offense before you want to evict the person. And you, the landlord, cannot determine. First, report to the rent control. Let's use our expertise to investigate what has gone on before we make an order for the person to vacate your premises.
Quite interesting. A number of people want to know what's the process to go through when your landlord misbehaves with these kinds of attitudes. I'm in party A, my landlord is in party B, and because of that there's a caveat: no noise making. We don't have to see you wearing NDC MPP clothes in the house. You are not supposed to play NDC MPP song in the house. I mean, what do you do when you are faced with these challenges with such landlords?
No, when you are faced with these challenges and the landlords insist that you should not exercise your right moderately, then it constitutes an offense which can be seen under Section 27, which is an offense for inducing tenants to quit. And quickly, every person who shall do any act whatsoever or refrain from doing anything which the condition of the tenancy requires him to do, with intent to compel the lessee of the premises to give up possession thereof, shall be guilty of an offense, and shall on conviction by the appropriate rent magistrate be liable to a fine not exceeding 50 penalty units or 600 Ghana cedis or 3 months imprisonment. So landlord should take note that if no offense has been committed, you cannot induce somebody because the person belongs to the other side of the party, of your party. You want to do things that to compel the tenant to vacate your premises. It constitutes an offense, and this is the penalty which, if at the discretion of the magistrate, can combine both the fine and then the imprisonment. So landlords should take note of this. What we are saying is, let's live peacefully. Elections will come and elections will go. But at the end of the day, we all live together in our premises.
Let's see this one. It's also it's a rent issue, but not really related to election. It says, some landlords and tenants, some tenants will jubilate to some extent, mocking the landlords. But please, I rented in Waliwali and I got transferred to Tamale. Whilst my rent wasn't expired yet, I left some of my staffs at Waliwali, and the landlord broke my room to pack the rest of my stuff out and give it out to someone else. Please ask if the landlord was right or wrong.
No, if you want to base on this narrative, then the landlord has committed an offense, which is very criminal. The process you have to follow, if somebody vacates your premises, we call it an abscondment case or an abscondment process. The abscondment process is where somebody has rented your premises and the date has expired and the person has not handed over your keys to you, but the person's belongings are still in your premises. If the tenancy has not expired and the person's belongings are still there, which means the person is still in possession of your premises, which means you don't have the right to forcefully open the door. The process involved is if somebody has gone, that means the person's tenancy has expired and your keys has not been given to you. You first come to the rent control department. We'll give you a sheet to be pasted on the door or on the premises for 2 weeks, inviting the person to come. If the person doesn't come, we go to the court and get order. So the court will give us order to force open the premises, where we will list all the items and then give the items to the landlord for safekeeping for another period. If another 2 weeks or so elapses, we go back to the court to get what we should do with the items, whether we should send it to the children's or whether we should sell and put the money in the consolidated fund or send the money to. So there are processes involved. So landlord whose keys has not been given to them based on the expiration of their tenancy should follow this process. What the landlord has done, if we want to dwell on this case, is a criminal offense. The person can report the case to the police for the police to see how we can solve it. Yeah.
Interesting. And this one, last one says, what do I do if my landlord wants to eject me unlawfully, but there is no tenancy agreement?
Yes. So, you know, you still come to the rent control. But there are 5 basic things that any landlord should take note. The first thing is what we call an assessment. When you build your premises and want to commercialize it, you have to come to the rent control department where we will do an assessment and give you the rate at which you have to charge your premises. What we give you is based on when we finish the assessment, we give you a certificate. So within this certificate that will state how much you have to charge for a period of 2 years. So when you get this certificate, that will give you the license to advertise for your premises. And when you advertise, you can advertise through the agent, or you can still come to the rent control where we have a vacant premises register. We put in all your details so that prospective tenants who are roaming to look for accommodation, when they also come and then the accommodation is suit them, we call the 2 of you and link you up. And then when you get the person will pay you money. It has of this money that if it's through the agent, that you take 5% of the rent to the agent. So agents who are taking 10% from prospective tenants and then taking 10% from landlords, it's very wrong, and it's an offense under the
It breaches the act.
So when the tenant comes to pay, as a landlord, it's your right and responsibility to go to the Ghana Revenue Authority and then pay what we call rent tax. Rent tax, if it's a residential premises, you pay 8% of the rent that the tenant has given you. If it's a commercial venture, you pay 15%. But we have to take note that the maximum rent advance any landlord is required, is mandated to collect in Ghana is 6 months rent advance. The law gives that if it's a short tenancy, you pay monthly. You cannot take more than 2 months. If it's a long tenancy, you pay a maximum of 6 months. Long tenancy, you can sign a tenancy agreement with somebody for 4 years. The law gives you that. But when it comes to the frequency of payment, the maximum the law states is that you have to pay a maximum of 6 months rent advance.
Okay.
So any tenant, the law also states that the landlord has no right to demand or even collect. So any prospective tenant, if a landlord is demanding more than 6 months rent from you, come to the rent control. We've started sanctioning them. We can help to reduce this. And also, what is interesting is that landlords who are collecting more than 6 months are not helping to bring the housing deficit down. Just a narrative. You know, I've gone to take a loan. The loan, you agree, I give you part of the money. Then I go to these real estate developers, put the other half there in what they call rent to purchase.
Yeah.
Or even buy a land and then start put a wooden structure on it. So that by the end of my tenancy with you, I can go and start dwelling in my
own apartment.
Then another person can come, then it will revolve in. By the end of the period, we see that people
will be owning their own houses.
So landlords should just calm down. You cannot build a house and then within a short time, recruit all your money. Housing it's a long-term investment. That's what many people don't understand.
And I'm sure this is a conversation that has just begun. We are not done with this conversation yet because we'll see more of these issues coming up. But a lot of education this afternoon. Tenants must not pay 10% to agents and still pay another 10%. Agents should not take 10% from tenants and still take 10%. That's a breach of the law.
It's 5% from the rent that the tenant
from the rent from the tenant. So that means that the landlord should pay that amount and not the tenant. And of course, you cannot pay more than 6 months for your rent. So all of these are things that you should keep in mind whilst you're renting. And this elections also make sure that you jubilate or make noise moderately. Be responsible as you exercise your right. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Emmanuel Hovi Bosu is the Public Relations Officer of the Rent Control, and he's been engaging us in some very, very interesting exercise. We're still on the polls. The Coalition of Domestic Election Observers, CODEO, has set up a parallel collation center to facilitate the flow of information to public on election day. The center is expected to receive and process data on real-time events from over 4,000 election observers who will be deployed across the country. This, according to CODEO, is to ease tensions on election day and increase the acceptability of results on election day. Meanwhile, acting CODEO chair Sheikh Karimeyal Shaibu believes the declaration of election day as holiday and the potential huge numbers at polling stations may lead to violence. There's more in the following report.
So there you have Daniel, one of the officers here at the NEF Center, or if you like, the National Information Center of the Coalition of Domestic Election Observers, CODEO. Well, this room will be the center where data will be collected from over 4,000 election observers who will be scattered across the country on election day, bringing information, real-time information from the ground. Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante is the coordinator of the center.
It's a nerve center for our observers to send in their data, their text messaging data, which we'll process and be able to share with the public in terms of how the elections are going. There are about 5 different events, we call them 5 events, that we'll be tracking. So right from the beginning, our observers are supposed to be there at 6 a.m. We want them to be able to be there and be able to report that they are there and they've been allowed to observe, so that at least we know that observers are in there. And then to observe the setup that the Electoral Commission is going to prepare for the voting process to start. So between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m., by 7:30.
As this goes on, Sheikh Karimeyal Shaibu, who is the acting chair of CODEO, calls for security to be on high alert, especially as election day is declared a holiday. He believes the potential huge numbers to be at home should be a cue to the security agencies.
Election day has been declared as holidays. I think that we want to advise the security agencies to be more on the alert, because what it means is that almost everybody is at home, and polling stations may be crowded, and over-enthusiastic party loyalists may engage in some activity. And so this should trigger some strategic approach to the election security monitoring and how they execute their work. It helps people to stay at their work post. The polling station may not be too congested and people may not have time to come and stay there again, except those who are not working. But majority of those who are working will have to go back to their workplaces and so on. So then that reduces the number that accumulates around the place. But now that is a holiday, what it means is that almost everybody will be free, and we anticipate that that crowding around could be misused by some people. And you know what? Once election comes with enthusiasm, and I think that we should not underestimate this. The security agencies, I'm sure, having their intelligence, will be able to really handle matters when it comes there.
On his part, Director of Electoral Services at the EC, Dr. Serebo Kweku, said this will put the EC on its toes to deliver a credible election.
So we believe that Kodewo taking this step of helping to throw light on our activities will be good. So that whatever we are doing, we can look back and say somebody is watching us. We know we are going to recruit approximately 240,000 temporary staff for this exercise. We are operating 38,622 polling stations. So we know that it will not be easy for any observer to cover all the centers. But it is our request that the observers will not be concentrating in the urban areas. They should spread themselves to cover as many centers as they can, because their presence also adds to the fairness and the freeness of an election.
We're still live on the Pulse. Now, there's some good news for startups and businesses in the green economy. SNV Netherlands Development Organization has announced it will provide significant support to such businesses to help boost their growth under its boosting green employment and enterprise opportunities in Ghana. I'm sure by now you want to know how you can benefit. We're joined in the studio by Jennifer Pakachum, Incubation and Acceleration Specialist. She's with SNV Ghana Green Project. Good to see you, Genevieve. Tell us about this project. Sounds quite juicy, if I may say.
So the project is called the Green. It's called the Green Project. Means boosting green enterprise and entrepreneurship opportunities.
Okay.
And this is an EU-funded program that SNV Ghana is implementing with UNCDF. It's a 4-year program, and we are implementing it in the Ashanti and Western regions. And we are already in the 2nd year, so in the thick of implementation mode. And we currently have a call for applications for our incubation and acceleration program.
How do I become part of it, or who qualifies to be part of this project?
So the main target for the Green Project as a youth, women, and returning migrants. And so if you fall within any of these categories, and when we say youth, we are looking for businesses or young people between 15 to 35 years. We relax it a bit for women, but no older than 40 years, because we really want the youth to take part in this. The main objective is for job creation. And so we want to get the youth, women, and returning migrants.
Okay, so I'm sure a number of people will want to participate in this, but you have your own mode of selection. Tell me about it.
Okay, so SNV sectors are agriculture, renewable energy, and water, sanitation, and hygiene wash. So if your business falls within any of these 3 sectors, and if you have any green aspects of your business, meaning that if you do not do any harm to the environment in the process of working on your business, then we are definitely interested in your business. And the purpose, like I said, is to boost job creation in the Ashanti and Western regions. And we are hoping that in the green sector, we can get more businesses that are going to help to improve the circular economy in Ghana.
So once you are selected and you become part of this group, what are the expectations?
Yeah. So it's a 6-month incubation program. And during the 6 months, we are going to be, we are working with partner hubs that are going to put the selected applicants in incubation. And during incubation, they will have access to a very wide mentor network. We are bringing in industry experts, subject matter experts, people who have built businesses and understand what it takes to build successful businesses to support them. And then we will also be having a lot of market linkages for the businesses. There's no point in growing their businesses and then once they increase production, there's no support for the increased production. And so we'll be trying to link them to market opportunities we will also work on improving their access to finance so that they can attract more financing from investors. So those are some of the key things that we'll be working on.
It's quite interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing more people join this startup support. And of course, you may have your, what really went into this kind of criteria, the kind of people that you want to support with this?
Yeah, so the criteria in terms of our project is funded by the EU Trust Fund, I said earlier, and the EU Trust Fund is really to support Africans and curb migration, especially illegal migration. And so we are looking at how to support people who have returned and who want to, they voluntarily returned and want to establish businesses in Ghana. But usually we find that it's a hard ecosystem. How do we help them to have businesses that are successful? And so this program is really for that. And then a lot of young people find that they are unemployed. And so another aspect of the project is a skills development. We have what we call the OYE or OYE approach that we use to support the unemployed as well. So those are some of the considerations that went into selecting youth women. And women because, I mean, if you call for if you want entrepreneurs, you find that there are a limited number who are women. But we want to encourage more women to go into businesses and to go into successful businesses. There are lots of female businesses, but oftentimes we don't see that they are growing to the extent that we want them to grow to. So this support is for...
Are you doing this in all 16 regions, or you have selected regions you're doing this?
Selected regions. So it's in Ashanti region and Western region. Okay. And we are going to the districts levels. Okay. So we have about 10 districts that we are working with between the two regions. We will provide some support for businesses in Accra who fall within the sectors, but this is really, you have to have some aspects of your business, a significant aspect of your business has to be from Ashanti and Western region. So for instance, you are sourcing for inputs or you have your production plants there, and then we will support you.
But why Ashanti and Western? What happened to the other 14 regions?
Yeah. So as I said earlier, the EU Trust Fund that is sponsoring this project was really made for migration. And Ashanti region happens to be a region of origin. So a lot of people who want to migrate move out of Ashanti region. And those who return usually settle in Western region. Okay. And so it makes sense that these two regions, if we want an intervention like this, we focus on these two regions. So that was why we chose those two.
I'm grateful for your time, and I'm hoping a number of people will benefit from this. Genevieve Pakachum is SNV Netherlands Development Organization. She's with this organization that is wants to sponsor people with startups, and they're based in the Ashanti and Western region. Thank you so much for passing through. Now, President Akufo-Addo is asking the United Nations General Assembly to ensure an equitable access to the COVID-19 vaccine, especially to developing countries, so that the vulnerable are not left out. The vaccine made by U.S. pharmaceutical giants Pfizer and its German partner BioNTech shows a 95% effectiveness in preventing infections, even in older adults with no serious safety concerns. Speaking on behalf of the President at the 31st special session in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Foreign Affairs Minister Shirley Ayoko Botchwey also advocated for debt release for countries struggling to contain the disease due to financial constraints.
ECOWAS welcomes efforts by the G20 countries in providing debt service relief to the poorest countries, including some ECOWAS member states. Mr. President, let me use this platform and this meeting to urge the international financial and development institutions to support the interventions of government in addressing the negative economic impact of the pandemic. The recovery will obviously be long-term and will require concessional financing and appropriate credit facilities to enable most of our countries emerge out of this global health crisis in a strong and stable state. This special session is being held on the back of positive news regarding the development of effective vaccines to curb further infections. While the world remains optimistic of the efficacy of the vaccines, we must ensure equitable access to the vaccines, particularly for developing countries. We must also act to ensure that developing countries are not constrained by the cost of the vaccines, which may deprive a huge portion of the world's population the fundamental right to healthcare. I therefore join previous speakers in calling for the fair distribution of the vaccines.
And that's how we wrap up on The Pulse this afternoon. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Many thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of our programs.